One of humanity's darkest hours, The Untold Story of the Holocaust, is a fantastic book that took us 2.5 years to put together. So today, I invite you not only to open this book, but also to open your heart, your conscience, and your soul. For over 2 decades, I've been a custodian of memory, not just of names and dates or places, but of voices. The voices of Holocaust survivors who trusted me with their truth, not because I ask the right questions, but because I choose to listen with reverence. I have sat across from men and women who witnessed the death of their children, who held on to the final whispers of their loved ones, and who, despite unimaginable suffering, rose from the ashes of history to become teachers of life. These remarkable souls, Sally Frischberg, Sammy Steigman, Inger Achenbacher, and my cherished friend and mentor, Samuel Bykov, became my inspiration, my compass, and my charge. So to get together with Dr. Dennis Humphrey, a visionary curriculum writer, Dr. Kenneth Hansen, a scholar whose depth of understanding anchors this work, we created one of humanity's darkest hours, a curriculum in a book. This book is not merely a text, it is an embodiment, a living, breathing experience that binds history with the present day relevance. What sets this work apart is not just its scholarly accuracy or technological innovation. It is its heart. Embedded within its pages are QR codes that offer you the chance to walk alongside survivors, witnesses, their testimonies, enter the remnants of concentration camps and explore the historic sites that still carry the scars of genocide. This is not history observed, it is history felt, and yet we do not simply speak of despair. We speak of survival, of resistance, of courage. One of the most potent threads in this work is the story of Transnistria, a place often erased from Holocaust discourse. In less than 2 weeks, over 54,600 Jews were murdered in Bogdanovka, Ukraine. One of the only 127 survivors was Samuel Bykov, who lost 29 members of his family. Samuel's voice runs through this book like a lifeline, through testimonies, trees planting, educational forums, and even an interactive chatbot. His story is not just remembered, it is lived. This curriculum is a book, serves as a tool of remembrance and a weapon against forgetting. It doesn't ask for your pity, it demands your attention, your reflection, and your action. As a Black man who understands the segregation and the systematic oppression, I see the Holocaust not as a distant tragedy, but as a mirror reflecting the perils of unchecked hate. From Selma to Sobibor, the struggle of justice has always required us to speak when it's inconvenient, to act when it's uncomfortable, and to remember when others forget. This book is my declaration of solidarity. It says clearly, your suffering matters to me. Your memory lives in me. Your humanity is mine, and mine is yours. We live in a time where old hatred wear a new mask, where anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia, and ideological extremism are rising once more. The same poisonous roots that burdened and birthed the Holocaust are growing again, disguised, digitalized, and dangerously normalized. This is why this book matters now more than ever. It is a lighthouse in a storm. It is a moral compass for educators, students, faith leaders, policymakers, and everyday citizens. It serves as a reminder that ignorance is not innocent and that silence is never, never truly neutral. Each chapter of this book has been carefully designed to engage minds, stir hearts, and spark necessary conversation. It blends rigorous history with the raw truth of lived experience. It takes you through the rise of anti-Semitism, the machinery of genocide, and the unthinkable atrocities committed. Yes, yes, but also the light of resilience, the hope of resistance, and the promise of remembrance. This is not just a book to be read. It is a call to conscience. We wrote it not to shock you, but to stir your heart. Not to condemn the past, but to redeem the future. I am that Brooklyn, New Yorker who has spent many, many, many years working with Holocaust survivors. I ask of you, as you grow through this book, let it become more than a lesson. Let it become your mission. Let it live with it. Let it live not just in your mind, but in your actions. So I ask, will you let these stories sit quietly, or will you carry them forward? Will you let these voices echo into silence, or will you amplify them with your own? One of humanity's darkest hours dares you to be the light, to remember, to reflect, to resist, because history may not repeat itself, but people do. Let this be the moment you choose to stand. You choose to stand. This is my introduction to one of humanity's darkest hours, the untold story of the Holocaust. Suzanne, you know?
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Bill. Now, please introduce your first topic.
My first topic will be the concentration camps, survivors in Transnistria. As we continue this meaningful conversation, I want to listen, hear, and tune into your hearts, directly from a place of reverence, responsibility, and remembrance. Because the heart of this book, one of humanity's darkest hours, is a historical record and an exploration of the human soul. We often speak about the Holocaust in numbers: 6 million Jews murdered, over 1 million children murdered, thousands of communities erased. About 1.5 million Roma, gypsies, were murdered. About 250,000 people with disabilities were slaughtered. 1.5 million Polish civilians were murdered. Additionally, Soviet POWs, Jehovah's Witnesses, LGBTQs, plus individuals were also persecuted and killed in significant numbers. But the Holocaust is not a number. It is a story, a scream, a silence, a prayer. In this book, we enter into the most brutal space ever devised by man, the concentration camp. We explore not only Auschwitz and Dachau, but also those often forgotten by the world: Bogdanovka, Dokumani Yokaak, and Akhmatchetka. The killing fields of Transnistria, a name absent from far too many history and far from too many books. And here I must pause to speak truthfully and personally. People sometimes ask me, Mr. Bill, yes, why would a Black man dedicate so much of his life to telling the story of the Holocaust? And my answer is simple: because the pain of one person must matter to all. I see the Holocaust, the same forces that led to the Middle Passage, to lynching in the Jim Crow South, to the genocide in Rwanda, Darfur, and the racial profiling on our streets. I see how ideology, once weaponized, can turn neighbors into enemies and citizens into executioners. Once a society normalizes hate, no one is safe. That is why I stand here not only as an author, but as a brother, a father, a son, a neighbor. I speak as a human being who believes in the sacred duty of remembrance. Our book highlights not just suffering, but survival. The resilience of those who, even in the shadow of the gas chambers, still whispered prayers, sang lullabies to their children, clung to hope. In the story of the Holocaust survivors, I see the blueprint of dignity in the lives lost. I hear the eternal warning. Never, never again. It is not a slogan, it is a commitment. And in the power of education, I see the only proper antidote to hate. So I ask all of you educators, students, and parents and leaders not to treat these chapters of one of humanity's darkest hours a distant history. Treat them as an urgent memory. Teach them, share them, live them. Because there are still camps in this world, maybe not with barbed wire, but with walls of ignorance, silence, and apathy. Our job is to tear down those walls. Let us never forget what happens when we turn away. Let us stand with the survivors. Let us plant new trees together. So on the topic of concentration, on the concentration camps, survivors in Transnistria, take a deep breath with me. Not for silence, but for solemnity. Because now we enter the heart of the Holocaust, the darkest corridors of human cruelty, the place where man became a machine of death, the dignity reduced to ashes. We must speak about the concentration camps, yes. We must speak about the death pits, yes. The frozen ghettos, the factories of horror. And we must speak the names of the places often neglected in Western textbooks, but burned into the soul of survivors. Bogdanovka, Dogmanioka, Atmancheka, the killing grounds of Transnistria, an area nestled between Ukraine and Moldova, where some of the most heinous crimes of Holocaust occurred. And yet, so few outside of Eastern Europe have heard these names. So let me tell you what really happened. Let me tell you what happened. This is what happened. In December of 1941, in the village near the Bug River in Ukraine, over 54,600 Jews were murdered. Not over years, but in under 14 days. They were not gassed. No, they were not gassed. Then a young man from Brooklyn stood on that blood-soaked ground where the 54,600 Jews were shot, burned, they were frozen, starved, buried alive. Mothers and children, elders and infants, the old and the young, the sick, the healthy, all marked for extermination. Children were burned in frozen pits. Elders burned alive in barns, soaked with gasoline. The murderers were Romanian troops. They were Ukrainian collaborators operating with the Nazi support. And while the ovens of Auschwitz incinerated the evidence, Bogdanovka left the dead to lie in the snow, their bodies turning the earth of red, as in the Dniester River frozen in silence. And in the midst of that inferno, 127 people managed to survive. Among them was a small boy, barely 2 years old. His name is Samuel Bykoff. Samuel's mother carried him to that world of barbed wire and mass grave. She held him while his cousins were shot. She walked through now snow-soaked with blood, refusing to let her child die where so many had fallen. Today, Samuel is not just a survivor, he is my mentor, my friend, the chairman of the Holocaust Remembrance Association in New York, a global educator, and my co-visionary of this mission. And together, he and I, arm in arm, walked those killing fields. Drowned decades later, the same frozen terrain that nearly became his grave. Let me take a moment to bring you into that space. We have walked together on the grounds where his family was murdered. On page 3 of this book, you'll see Samuel standing next to me as I am planting some of the trees in honor of the 127 survivors in Baghdad. Each tree is a symbol of resistance. Each root pushes back against the soil of hatred. And every time I look at Samuel, standing strong in the land of the dead, I thought, this is what resilience looks like. This book is infused with Samuel's testimony, his presence, his tears, and his triumph. The QR codes and the digital links, readers from every nation and every background can hear his story, carry his legacy forward. This is what legacy demands. Transnistria in the Untold Story, and telling it is our act of justice. Within these pages, students, educators, and avid readers don't just read about atrocities, they feel them, they see them. Through QR codes and multimedia links, they hear survivors like Samuel, Sally, Sammy, and Inga describing the horror and hope. They learn that the Holocaust wasn't only committed by gas and steel, it was committed by silence, propaganda, and indifference. Yes, the Holocaust did not begin with bullets. It began with words, words that dehumanized, words that excluded, words that divided, words turned neighbors into executioners, and silence into complicity. And while the tools of genocide have changed, the language of hate still survives. It is in our politics, it is in our social media, it is in our headlines. That is why each chapter of this book and this moment in our collective memory is so essential. When you learn from the past, you recognize the warning signs of the present. And allow me to speak as a Black man born into a world that still bears the scars of racial injustice. When I stood in Baghdad, I saw more than graves. I saw the lynching trees of the American South. I saw the chains of slave ships. I saw the mass graves of Rwanda, Darfur, Bosnia, Cambodia, and Syria. I saw what happens when society says, these people are not us. That is why I care about the story, because it is not only about Jews suffering, it's about human suffering. And the moment we separate the two, we lose moral compass. So, or some may say, Mr. TInglin, this isn't your history. But I say, this is our shared humanity. Samuel Bykoff, Sally Frischberg, Sammy Steigman, and others' story is not a Jewish story. It is a human story. It is a human history. And human history belongs to us, all of us. Every camp, every grave, every child, every scream, it belongs to you. To all of us who believes in dignity and justice and the sanctity of life. Through this book, I want you to ask, what would I have done? Would I have spoken up? Would I have hidden my family? Would I have stood against evil? Even if it cost me everything? This is not a book of answers. It is a book of questions. And the answers must come from each of us. So I hear the same question over and over again as a Black man, Mr. TInglin. Why are you so deeply invested in telling the story of the Holocaust? What does it mean for us today? So I welcome that question over and over again, not as a challenge, but as an opportunity, because the answer, my friend, is deeply personal and profoundly universal. So you see, I did not choose the Holocaust. The Holocaust chose me. It chose me through the testimonies of survivors who whispered their truth into the void. It chose me through the ashes of children whose names the world never learned. As a Black man in America, I carry my generational memory of chains, of cotton fields, of segregated schools and burning crosses. I know what it means to be seen less, to be feared, to be forgotten. When I read about the Jews being marked with yellow stars, I saw black coats and red lining. When I studied the ghettos of Warsaw, I see the ghettos of Chicago and Harlem. When I saw the cattle cars packed with Jewish bodies, I remember slave ships packed with African flesh. The Holocaust chose me when I looked into the eyes of Samuel Bykar. I saw not just a Jewish survivor, but a mirror, a man who bore witness to a system that tried to erase him, a man who carried the weight of history on his shoulders. He walked upright with grace, wisdom, and love. When books were burned, I heard the echoes, Black history erased from the American classroom. Oppression is not a Jewish issue. It is not a Black issue. It is a human issue. I care about Holocaust because I know what hatred leads, because silence kills. Our history, not the same, but our pain intersects. Could you imagine the hearts of the parents, the family, when on October 7, 2023, Hamas attacked Sderot, Beraa, Kfar Azaz, and other places, killing, raping, and burning Jewish people alive? That's why I stand here, not in sympathy, but in solidarity. Because oppression doesn't ask for your religion. Hatred doesn't care about your language. Bigotry only sees differences and weaponizes them. The Holocaust, my friends, was not an anomaly. It was the consequences of unchecked racism, state-sponsored propaganda, and the silence of good people. So let me say this clearly, it can happen again. In different forms, under a new disguise, but it can happen again. And in some places it already is. We are living in a time of rising anti-Semitism. We're living in a time when truth questions, facts are distorted, and history is politicized. That's why this book, one of humanity's darkest hours, is more than a record. It's a response. It is my way of saying, not on my watch, not in my classroom, not on my college campus, not on my country. You teachers, leaders, and parents, you see what's happening in the hallways. TikTok is shaping young minds more than textbooks. Conspiracy theories are replacing conversations. You must meet this generation where there are these tools that educate, awaken, and empower. That's why this book utilizes interactive technology, survivors' testimonies, timelines, QR codes, and study guides, because we are not just fighting ignorance, but also disconnection. And I say to every student, to every educator, and every American, this is your story too. Not because you're Jewish, not because you're Black, not because you're Asian, not because you're a Christian, Muslim, or a Buddhist, but because you are human. The Holocaust teaches us this. If you allow anyone to be dehumanized, everyone is at risk. So yes, I'm a Black man who teaches about the Holocaust, because my family, my friend Samuel, Sally, Sammy, Inga, Holocaust survivors, and other Holocaust survivors taught us what happens when one remains silent. We must believe in the power of education. We must believe in the power of education to heal what is hatred. Because when we remember together, we rise together. To forget is not to betray. To remember is not to resist. And to stand together across lines of color, creed, and culture is to fulfill the dreams that no tyrant could kill. That all people are created equal, and the truth is the highest form of love. And let your life be your answer. Never again is not about the past. It is a commandment for the future, and it begins with you. Education Save. This book is my bridge. It links past and present. It calls all of us to stand together, to teach the truth and guard the gates of justice. So to my fellow educators, students, parents, and leaders, let this book be more than a text. Let it be your testimony. Let it be your residence. Let it be your resistance. Let it be your light. Thank you.
Bill?